mentioned clearly this morning, this consuming fire of God that represents His holiness could be used by God on us in two different situations. One is on the positive situation, and the other is on a negative situation. The positive situation is that when we have something for God and something offered to God and have some life for God, God would accept it. By what way? By the burning way. And that burning is just consuming. And this consuming is positive. It's a kind of a divine acceptance of what we are, what we do, and what we have for God, right? This is the positive result. Then there is also the negative result, that is a kind of a judgment. Right after the coming down of the holy fire from heaven, out of God's presence, a case happened. And this is not a positive case. It's altogether a negative case, right? A case is related to fire. And this case was judged. So the holy fire did some consuming. What happened? The two sons of Aaron, the chief priest, he had two sons by the name Nadab and Abihu. They are no doubt also priests. And they did something seemingly not bad, right? Why? Because they offer something to God, but with the strange fire. And the strange fire is just the common fire. The fire that was not from the heavens. So this thing transpired, and such a kind of offering of the strange fire, God judged. Right? God judged it by consuming the two priests who offered such a strange fire. Here we could see God, on the one hand, is merciful and is kind. But on the other hand, God's also quite severe, right? Quite strict. Right after all the blessings on that day, in the entire history of the universe was an excellent day, right? The very day of God's initiation to apply Christ to His people for their enjoyment. It was quite a day. To us, we might be tolerate the mistake because of that glorious day. We would think, well, such a day, so glory, so great. Yet here we see, with God, there was no tolerance, right? This happened. Right, following God's blessing, God judged. Firstly, it consumed in the sense of accepting. Now, in another sense of judging. Right? Right, the death of two persons, and especially the two sons of Aaron. You see, the dead under the consuming of the heavenly fire, in front of all the people. That was really something, right? It's really something. reason these two priests did this strange fire offering was that they drank. Yeah, they drank. They got drinking with some wine. And this drinking made them careless. There was no fear with them. They just did it in a loose way. And then they suffered God's holy judgment. The principle, we believe it is the same. We have to be burning. We have to be hot, right, for the Lord. Yet, our being hot, it should be altogether spiritual. We all know from being natural, we go on to being spiritual. This is a way of the cross. Our natural man, our natural being, whatever we are in the natural life, and this should be crossed out, right? We must hold such an attitude. Even you are doing things for God. Now, could you see these priests, they didn't receive the judgment because they did something other than things for God, right? But they did something for God. In this kind of doing, they got judged. Why? Just because of the natural life. Something of the natural life came out, right? It seemed that they love God. They love God in natural way to their service, right? Even in their sharing or giving testimony in meetings, it is quite easy for us to do it in a natural way, right? Even we may do it also in a natural, in the common fire, in the strange fire. And these today probably would not mostly bring the physical death, but for sure it brings in the spiritual death. So we must learn to touch the holy things for God, not in the natural life. The thing should be right, and the way also should be right. We have to do the right thing in the right way, right? Just the right thing, that's not adequate. It must be done in the right way. To offer the strange fire for God, this is to do the right thing in the wrong way. And this brought in the consuming to death as a kind of judgment. We must be honest, it's not so easy to be so pure or so purified from being natural. Moses, he was called eventually at his age of 80. You know, Moses told us a man's life is about 70. When this man is strong, he could live 80. So 80 is the age of the end. Right? And at the end of his age, Moses was called by God. And this indicates what? This indicates God called a man who is ended in his natural life. Anyhow, either we are young or we are old, we all have to learn not to do things, not to say things with our natural strength, by our natural ability, for natural affection. Anything natural, you must consider that as a snake. It's a very poisonous matter. The natural life is a poison. The fire from the altar, that is fire that touched all the offerings. All the offerings. So that fire is not only holy, but it is also sanctified, because it has touched all the burnt all the offerings, the sin offering, the burnt offering, right? All the offerings it touched. So after touching all these offerings, this touching fire becomes sanctifying. Nadab and Abihu, they didn't offer this kind of sanctifying fire. Rather, they offered a common fire, right? And this fire is not from Jehovah, but from man, no doubt. And this fire is not from the heavens, but the fire from the earth.